My talk today is about mobile communication research in Asia, and this is the last talk before lunch. So I have some good news for people in this room. If you're too hungry, is that most of my talk actually is based on a published article in the Asian Journal of Communication. Okay, if you are too hungry, you can grab lunch and read that article. Although you are still going to be missing probably 20%. And to some of you, this might be more interesting, 20% new things that's not in that published article. Okay, so mostly I'm going to be talking about mobile communication research in Asia. And this 2 years ago, I got invited by the Asian Journal of Communication for the 20th anniversary issue of that journal to review mobile communication in that continent. And I decided, to shorten, because we don't have, back in 1990, there was not many, there was zero really serious mobile communication research, going on in Asia, as well as not the rest of the world. So I decided to shorten it. Mostly it started in the late 1990s. Right? And so this is an overview of the field, what has been achieved, and what are the problems there, what should be done, which are the main institutional pillars for the building up of mobile communication research. And I started the article with this book, the Personal Portable Pedestrian. All right, this is a book edited by Mitsuko Ito, anthropologist, who also has a PhD in education, right, who is a leader in the mobile youth culture in Japan. And in the opening chapter, Ito talked about the possibility and the need for a changing intellectual geopolitics, based on, because back in 2005, when this book was most of the work in this PPP book, as we often call it within the circle, is firstly done in Japanese, and then they were translated into English and published by MIT Press, right? And the goal that Mitsuko Ito set out to accomplish in this endeavor is to introduce into the English literature, when most of discussions about new media, mobiles, and ICTs, information and communication technologies, is framed within the conventional experience of the PC, right? And this PC-centered internet, whereas Japan is the, already getting lots of mobile, starting with Docomo, with the mobile experienced online experiences. That's the basis for the empirical research, which Ito and her Japanese colleagues were hoping to introduce into the larger English literature for a reimagining of what new media is and how new media research can be done. And so this intellectual geopolitics is, of course, we borrow it from the political, even military geopolitics jargon without trying to start a new world war or Cold War, but it's more about importing, exporting, importing ideas, methods, theories, concepts from outside Asia and exporting them and collaborating, both within Asia, and beyond. So that's the most thing I wrote about, in that article that I'm going to introduce briefly. But this is something else, I decided to add. It's not in that article, we will return to this. This is what I call, the CGQ labor theory of the iPhone age. I had to struggle it a little bit because I could also call this CCI Qut labor theory of the iPhone age, because it was born 3 years ago in the creative precinct, right, in that cafe, right, outside the glass house. And when Kate Crawford, who just joined Microsoft Research, and Melissa Craig of University of Sydney, and myself, the three of us sat together And we started, this was a workshop organized by Professor Jim Burgess and Larissa Horch, all right, for what we call it the iPhone age. Okay, so this is actually one of the many brain children of CCI QUT, right, that we wanted to publish an article out of this, but somehow it's still in the incubator. So this is the first time. Actually, this is also the first time I present this Asian Journal of Communication article, all right, but it's also the first time we take this brainchild out of the incubator and see how it might work. So it started, there are a few things. I'm going to illustrate this more after I go through the main content of that article. Number one, okay, we started to draw this circuit of labor because we were none of the three of us were, were satisfied with the classic, okay, Paul Degay, okay, circuit of production when he was studying the Sony Walkman. Okay, by the way, another Asian techno-culture icon, right? And so we thought it could be better if we are not looking at Walkman, if we are using a similar approach, okay, but smarter, all right, and drawing closer to the Asian realities. One of the things we were talking about in that reality is about the production. So on the left-hand side, okay, you see a one-directional circuit. Okay, is a top-down circuit. Okay, from the capital. Okay, this is more in the Marxian sense of financial, okay, power, okay, capital, and at the very bottom is body. All right, so this is a process of, you can think about it, sweatshop make the material process, okay, of affirmative design and traditional old-style industrial production, all right, where human bodies were used in sweatshops. Many of them are in Asia, all right, and it started from the design part. We used Manuel Castell's terminology, self-programmable labor, when you design them in an affirmative way, right, like Anne so brilliantly explained just now. But then you need programmable labor, okay, in the factory, in the assembly line, to just do the things that designers thought they should be doing, okay. Every 15 seconds they finish one procedure, and then the next 15 seconds, the next 15 seconds, next 50 seconds, right? And some of these people work with computers these days when they're testing the software. So in the Chinese context, I translated this term from Chinese, 灰领, okay, gray color. So these people in between the white color designer and the blue color worker, okay. Sometimes we call them software gray colors. Right? But then on the right-hand side, you see another circuit, which is not one-directional. Okay, you can move, either clockwise or anti-clockwise, and you can be spinned off, okay, by the formal circuit of labor on the left-hand side into the informal. Okay, in the winter school, many of our emerging scholars, PhD students, they are talking about informal economies, informal forms of labor. One of the new terms I learned this week is called hope labor, right? And then, so you could be spinned off, okay, from the formal circular to the informal. Okay, that's where we got linked up with, okay, more cultural studies, okay, gender studies, okay, NGOs, volunteers, hacktivism. Okay, they're on the right-hand side. So I'm going to illustrate this in a minute after we go through what's going on in Asian mobile communication research, which is essentially what I did, in that article to review mostly other people's work. So context, number one, if we look at mobile communication research in Asia, okay, as one robust, okay, and still growing, but still quite, limited in significant ways, okay, as one field, okay, growing in the larger field of media and communication research around the world. And since the mid-1990s, we see a shift of epicenter for both the mobile communication industry and the academic efforts to understand what's going on with mobile communication. So this started in the mid-1990s. Okay, that's the end of the Cold War, and the beginning of the Asian financial crisis. So when we started, okay, in Asia, the first generation of Asian population starting to know mobile technology is mostly Nokia, Ericsson, Motorola. Okay, it's this kind of European, okay, Motorola is American brands. Okay, they came in, okay, and that's also, we see in the first generation of researchers, many of them came to Asia to do research from Nokia, right? From Mizuko Ito, okay, she got her PhDs in Stanford, okay, and then, okay, went back to Japan to do research, okay. But then since that heyday of Western dominance, okay, we see a shift. If we see today, okay, how important is, okay, Nokia, okay, not as important as before, because of, in part at least, because of Samsung and HTC, okay, South Korean brands, Taiwanese brands, right? And what is Ericsson, okay, the giant in the late 1990s, is now called Sony Ericsson. And even that is not doing that well, right? And we go a little bit down, we see some of the Chinese brands, okay, the ZTE, the Huawei, okay, which are getting popular in the developing world, and even the most popular, brand now, okay, iPhone, okay, we termed our, new labor theory, the labor theory of iPhone age for a reason, right? It's all made in China. Okay, without the input of labor, okay, Chinese labor or Indian, okay, input of all this software, okay, industry, okay, resources, and the market, okay, Asian market is now dominant for many of these handset market because, okay, Asia, okay, now has contribute the most, okay, to the mobile market growth worldwide. And there are lots of state initiatives trying to, okay, cultivate, for example, okay, smartphone, okay, games, right, in these software banks, parks, for example. And so today, what we see is, okay, Asia has the world's largest mobile subscriber population. Okay, not surprisingly, because Asia has the most of the world's population. Right? And now China just passed 1 billion, okay, mark for it has 1.3 billion people. Okay, it has more than 1 billion mobile subscriber now, and India has close to 1 billion. Okay, 963. The last time I looked at it, and if we put just China and India together, that's about 30% of the world's mobile user population. Which is not surprising, because if we put China and India together, they got about 30% of the world's population. All right? So the almost saturation of mobile growth, especially in the more developed parts of Asia. Right? 10 years ago, the world has two of the world's highest mobile penetrated societies were the UAE and Hong Kong. Okay, because they were very small, they were almost all urban. But now the world has about 100 countries with more than 100, okay, mobile phone penetration rate. Right? So in many of these societies are in Asia as well. Okay, especially if they are the more developed part, urbanized part, Asian societies. Large handset manufacturers. Okay, the largest manufacturer size, is Foxconn. Okay, I'm going to use Foxconn as my illustration for the circuit of labor, right? And it manufactures all the iPhones, okay, and many of the Nokia, Samsung, okay, not HTC, all right, but it's all one Taiwanese-owned company, okay, that's using more than 1 million Chinese workers in mainland China, and they manufacture more than half of the world's mobile phones, just one company. Leader in m-commerce of the world now is still Japan. Okay, despite its size, the Japan's m-commerce, okay, the commerce that's done over mobile phone in Japan is 10 times the total value of m-commerce in the U.S. Okay, so Japan is the world's leader. 5 of the top operators, okay, the world's most largest mobile operators are in Asia, and not surprisingly, they are all from these 5 are all from China or India. However, don't forget there's another Asia out there. Besides all these places like Hong Kong, where I'm from, we got 116 mobile phone per 100 people almost 10 years ago, all right? But there are other places, like Myanmar. The country has about twice the population as Australia, and they could only people could only purchase mobile phone earlier this year. Right? And North Korea, is one of the very few countries in the world that has 0% mobile phone penetration. All right? Not because of we know the reasons. All right? It's but interestingly, in other parts of Asia, except the Myanmar and North Korea, mostly it's because of the political restrictions. We see in places, in many, this is not only a phenomenon in Asia, but also in Africa and Latin America, in the slums. People do not have access to toilets, or if they have they use toilets. If you know what I'm talking about, they use flying toilets. It's usually a plastic bag, and then it flies, right? But then, even though they don't have access to toilets, they have access to mobile phone. All right. The last time I saw people selling mobile phone in the streets in South China, one mobile phone was sold for a little more than $1 Australian. $1, one phone. All right, used phone. That's what before I started bargain. I didn't even attempt to bargain. Usually in Asia, if you bargain, it gets cheaper. All right. So you see how affordable they are. So this is just to visualize. 1982. This was the world's submarine cables used for analog telephone conversation. This is how it looked like last year. These are not copper cables. They are fiber optics, of course. And you see how this part of the world was increasingly connected. As an epicenter. This is closer to the more developed part of East Asia. And you see there are more than a dozen fiber optics going out from Hong Kong or Tokyo. So where are the academic research institutions and what are they doing? It began with the commercial institutions. They started the Nokia and Microsoft, started especially in India. This is the Intel. Were also there. And for example, when I was talking to Nokia. Asia is a very important place for them to do design. Just to follow up, with the ends. The earlier Nokias were all like just straight one piece of metal. Right? But later on, they changed design into clamshells. Remember, there was a period clamshells was really popular, and the clamshell design came mostly from Asian countries, right? This is especially, Asian ladies, girls like clamshell design. So this was popular. This was something started from Asia, but then had a global impact. But then following the commercial institutions in the U.S. and Europe. We have Docomo, the Japanese. Samsung, China Mobile are also investing a lot into research. But when commercial, players like this, do research, they do not necessarily share them, all right, in the most accessible, affordable way. But then we have a wave of public institutions, universities, including QUT, right, and are putting up research, and organizing conferences, and some of the foundations, Gates Foundation, Ford Foundation, Japan Foundation, right, ARC, and usually these are not countries too far away from the Asian Pacific. IDRC is Canadian, the Canadian International Development Agency, as well as many of the ministries of education and national R&D funds in Asia. So these are the major players. I'm not going into details. I'm not going to read this, but these were the conferences, most of which I attended. Okay, it started, incidentally, in Hong Kong. All right, there was a series of conferences between 2005 and 2009. Okay, and in 2009 July, that's the ARC CRN iPhone workshop where we draw that circuit of labor. And from that, there's also a book that Jing and Larissa and Ingrid edited together called Studying Mobile Media. Okay, but our new labor theory was not developed enough to fit in that book. But there are many other interesting things going on. So actually, if we look at just, this is my very scientific sample. Okay, I got invited to these conferences. Okay, out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 2 were in Australia. Okay, Australia actually is a very important place for us to have conferences and to actually there are very active researchers funded by ARC. Okay, from QUT to join the Asian mobile research field. However, there's observations that since 2009, we don't have that many. Okay, look at 2005, we had 2 conferences in a row. Okay, in Hong Kong and in Beijing. Okay, the Hong Kong one was in City University of Hong Kong. Beijing conference was co-organized by Peking University and France Telecom. Right, but then since 2009, we are not having this kind of Asian mobile research conferences, which is maybe a little sad for people who are really dedicated to this growing fields. But when I think back, it's probably a sign of normalization, because for large international communication association, they have a regular pre-conference for mobile research. Okay, every time you go there, you see people talking about data, observations, even theories from Asia. So there are more regularized global events, which is a good sign. These are the main publications. Right, some of there were already lots of scattered publications about Asian communication research, right? But then since 2007, and I happen to be a co-editor of the New Media and Society's themed section. Okay, I did it with Eric Thompson from National University of Singapore. And then between 2007 and 2009, there were 4 different journals. Some of them are SSCI journals, right? But if you look at the publishers, they are all Western, European, Sage, Taylor and Francis, or Routledge. These are the publishers. But then you see, following the conferences, the publications are also getting more gathered, to create a collective impact. But also books, right? Except the Mizuko Ito book, there are more and other books, not only in English, but also in Chinese, in other languages, right, Asian languages. However, still we see only one book, that is based on non-English research in the Asian context, but then get translated into English. Still that only the one. Portable personal pedestrian. So what do they do? First, actually there's a long line. If we define, I talk about mobile communication research in the 1990s. It was not about mobile phone. It was about pager. Already there were people, significant, some of them are my colleagues in the Chinese University of Hong Kong. They were already doing study about pagers, and how they were affecting people's lifestyles, for example, right? And then the latest one is all, about Twitter, Facebook, and Weibo, that's the Chinese version of Twitter. And many of these latest social media research. And they look at diffusion, of course, who are using, who are adopting, who are not, why, how do they use it, what kind of attitudes. There are behavioral studies, physiological, some of the design studies were also there, how to design the phone that is, most suitable for this type of demographic group, and that's another tradition. But also there are people looking at very macro issues, we talk about diffusion, we talk about behavioral, those are very micro issues. But then people are looking at national policy, China and India again came out to be the countries where people study the national policy framework and reform, okay, a lot, including WLL. WLL is something that we only see that had scaled up in China and India. Okay, it's called the wireless local loop. Okay, it's a limited mobility service mobile phone it started in Japan. Okay, and then South Korea had a brief period of using that. The basic idea, okay, is to sell mobile phone with limited mobility so that people can use in that city, but there's no roaming service. So basically, the advantage is you get to pay the price of landline, but you get a mobile phone in your city only, right? So that was very popular in China. It's called Little Smart, 小灵通, right? This is something very uniquely Asian. Okay, this technology never really went outside Asia, but it's a very important part, especially if we look at the lower classes, the lower income groups in Asian cities. And another important macro level, but also it scales, in now even a little bit. This is the so-called bottom of the pyramid, okay, studies. Okay, the relevance is now going even beyond Asia a little bit. Okay, but it started in South Asia and Southeast Asia. Okay, a leading scholar is Samarajiva. Okay. He used to be called Minister Samarajiva. He was the Minister of Information for Sri Lanka, right? And then now they have a research team called Learn Asia. Okay, and this is looking at how micro entrepreneurs can use mobile phone, and even how mobile phone can stimulate more micro businesses in the developing world. But then between the micro and the macro, there's the vast gray zone of what I call the meso-level studies. Right? So here we talk about youth culture. Okay, the Japanese book was a very good example of that. There was a whole series of Japanese studies, including some done by Larissa Hord. Okay, and women, ethnic groups, and migrants in Asia. This is a new book. This is the best book I've read this year. Okay, about Philippines. Okay, but in this case, it's not Philippines in Philippines, but Filipino domestic helpers in the UK. Okay, Mardiano and Miller, okay, leading ethnographers of the field, they followed these domestic helpers, how they use especially mobile technologies in the UK, and then follow them back into the Philippines. It's called Migrants and New Media. It deals with gender, family, and transnational family, okay, and also domestic help, right, care work. And there's another meso-level study, usually focusing on rural communities, but also low-class urban communities and NGOs. Okay, it's called ICT for Development. Okay, this is following the developmental communication tradition. And then social political movements. Okay, this morning, we started with Stuart's reminder of the Arab Spring, but I'd like to remind everyone again, the first country that had used mobile technology to topple an existing president is the Philippines. 2001, the People Power 2 movement, they used SMS to topple the president, that was under corruption charges, and then replace him with, with a new president. So that happened, and following that, South Korea had a similar movement. That was in a normal presidential election, but then they elected an unlikely candidate in 2002. So social movements and is another very important area of study. Even before the Arab Spring in Asia. Methods, I'm not going to read this slide, but you have micro level, traditional positivistic, and also ethnographic methods. Macro level, policy, lots of secondary data from national statistic bureaus or ITU, but also meso. The meso level is, like I said, is vast. So people were using everything, possible based on the micro and macro level analysis, but they are adding, social network analysis, action, research, and participatory design to it. But here is the problem. When we have so many methods, people are using so many different kind of methodological and theoretical traditions, it's difficult to have conversation across these subfields in Asian mobile communication research. So the result is we don't see a true Asian debate. When we are having a meaningful debate, it's usually Asians are debating with a Western theory. That's the typical pattern. Right? Or we debate within our national boundaries to say this is what's going on in the Philippines, this is what's going on in India or China, right? And the field's eclectic nature really impedes cross-disciplinary discussion. And altogether, however, there is a movement, because if you look at ICT studies as a whole, this technology impact versus social shaping, initially, if we look at mobile communication research in Asia, is more about how this new technology is going to change Asian values, for example, right? Liberating the people from the traditional dictatorship. But now, increasingly, we'll see more and more social shaping in that sense. But this is at a very global level. Not whether it's Asia or not is not that important for that debate. But more crossfire at the global level is one has to do with is mobile phone really individualizing us or collectivizing us, right? So from that book, Mizuko Ito, edited with her colleagues, we got terms like the telecocoon, how the mobile phone is actually making us, constrained within an even smaller cocoon, or intimate, community of relationships. So we don't need to communicate with people who are not like us, right? And in South Korea, we have, professor like Yun, who was arguing about the retraditionalizing effect or immobilizing effect, because when he was looking at high school students in Seoul, most of the people got their first mobile phone from parents or elder brothers. So it's a reinforcement of traditional relationship, so they have to be more loyal to their family, which is also similar to Barandarit's study in Indonesia about the Indonesian modernity and how Islam become a very important part of Indonesia's mobile culture. So overall, this is not always more personal. Mobile phones are not always personal when it's operating in the Asian context, but oftentimes we see selective re-articulation of existing values. Could be Islam or Confucius, could be family, could be political affiliation of the most traditional type. And so this also connects with the next debate, is mobile really enhancing our political social freedom or facilitating social control? Right? This is an area that Vincent Raphael articulated in his analysis of People Power 2 in the Philippines, 2001, saying actually, the People Power 2 movement was more about making the social exclusion problem even worse. How much time do I still have? I'm getting too deep. Like I said, you can read all this. What is to remain? So the rise of Asian mobile communication research has decisively altered the intellectual landscape of ICT studies worldwide. Asian society have become popular research sites for mobile communication research by Asian-based and non-Asian scholars, and this trend is likely to remain. The burgeoning field is truly eclectic. This reflects the richness of empirical reality in Asia, from the most connected to the least connected, and the heterogeneity of media and communication studies nowadays. But the divergence of research orientations hampers exchange among subfields and across societal boundaries. This challenge will also persist. More systematic institutional building at the regional level is in order. The community of Asian mobile communication researchers can be best stimulated when engaging cross-boundary debates that occur across scholarly traditions and perspectives. across the micro, meso, and micro levels of analysis. We need to include less developed mobile markets and less studied social groups. Only by so doing can Asian become something more than a convenient geographical label based on proximity. Rather, it will become a substantive geographical term in the global landscape of mobile comm research. So this is actually, when I look back at this diagram we developed 3 years ago, I think it's calling for, if we following the conclusion from that article, is actually this is one of the many ways we can have some kind of southern synthesis. By southern, I mean the global south. The developing countries of Asia, Latin America, and Africa. And what does this mean? I illustrate this with Foxconn. On the left-hand side, you see this image is from the latest issue of Time magazine. When you open, the iPhone, it's actually Chinese factory and more than 1 million Chinese workers right there. And the right-hand side, I have to spend a little bit of time, maybe explain a little more. This is one of the Foxconn survivors. Am I already over time? All right. Anyway, we followed her. There's a whole story about, this is the horizontal circuit of labor. She survived. She jumped 2 years ago, but she survived, and our research team followed her. And she loves to grow plants. So we've been sending her seeds. Most of these seeds for these plants in rural China now, she's in rural China, are from California. That's her peak, all right? And then the digital camera she used was also donated by students and scholars, in Hong Kong. So this is a good example to show. And her story became big last spring through the Chinese equivalence of Twitter, Weibo, right? So I'm not going to expand that in light of time. So if we look at her story, this Foxconn survivor story is actually someone who was spinned off, from the vertical formal circuit of labor on the left-hand side, and then to care work. She became a micro blogger now, right? And then from there, lots of volunteers were engaging. So this is one way for us to see how mobile communication in Asia may, and engaged action participatory research may lead to openings, right, for the circuit of labor. This is another, I don't have time to go through this, but I download this all the time, this kind of video all the time, so it's sometimes wrong. This was last month, this was outside the gate of a Foxconn plant in South China, and the security guards were roughing up one guy, and there were hundreds of other workers watching, and then they were forcing, the other people could not, so there are lots of beating and cursing, so I'm collecting this kind of citizen or journalistic citizens, I think that's, who are putting their content. These citizens turns out to be members of this million-strong workforce who are making our iPhones as well. This is probably also captured on an iPhone, right? So that's a place where we can see the other way, how, from the campaign, this can go from the left-hand side, or it can go to the right-hand side, either to stimulate the activists, who want to, do this kind of new type of iPhone labor, activism, or it could be used, This video can also, you can imagine, this kind of security guards roughing up workers can also be used back, by the management to threaten even more people, all right? So that's is an open, ended process that I have to use this to conclude. This is, if we follow this perspective of southern synthesis grounded in Asian realities, we may use this as a chance to theorize for increasingly mobile global south the world over. And we need to use this chance to strengthen our organic relationship between research, participatory action, and policy, and to rediscover the materiality of mobile communication research. I already emphasized the materiality aspect strong enough, so I don't need to belabor this. But finally, mobile communication research in Asia should be also seen as a process of regional dialogue and a way to a more humane world on the planetary scale. Thank you.